The Paolo Emilio, Tier 7 Premium Italian Destroyer, received what I would call a rework in the May 2026 update. It got both a buff and a pretty significant nerf to its AA. We'll talk about the details in a little bit, but what I've got for you here is, I think, pretty representative of my average experience in the Paolo Emilio. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of this destroyer, mostly due to its design. This is a destroyer that's been engineered to be very good at one thing in particular, and that is torpedoing battleships and sending them back to sea, or back to port, rather. It just does that in a unique way. It's known as YOLO Emilio in some circles, and the reason for that is because you can deploy one of these trademark Italian exhaust smoke generators, conceal yourself, and then get into danger close range next to enemy battleships, at which point you send maybe one, maybe two racks of these nuclear-tipped torpedoes at the battleship, and usually one rack of the torpedoes is all you need to send somebody back to port. Paolo Emilio's very good at that when you can successfully set up one of those YOLO runs, which in my experience does not happen every single battle, and is not going to happen in this battle. But that is not the main focus of the buff it received anyway. The main focus of that is on the main battery guns. But hold that thought on torping for a second, because the main reason I don't care too much for the Paolo Emilio is because personally, I think torpedoing battleships is about the least useful thing you can do in a destroyer. The most useful thing you can do is what we're doing right now, which is sitting inside of the Bravo cap and trying to take it. By the way, this CV is going to harass us for the majority of this match, and I suppose partially due to the nerf Paolo got to its AA, we are not going to shoot down even one single plane, even though I think we're going to end up using all of our charges of DFAA. DFAA is not all that good when your AA is bad to begin with. You can only polish a turd to some degree, and it's still going to be a turd. Here comes the CV. We'll dodge these torpedoes, thankfully, so we'll be able to take this cap, and then we'll sail out of it. Now, before we actually get into the action of this battle, I should probably show you my commander build. I'm running Fulgosi, mostly because I want to buff the parameters of the Italian exhaust smoke generator. Fulgosi also has the fully packed skill. I think so does Luigi Rizzo now. And then he's got quick fix in the first row. In order to take fully packed and not take unstoppable, which I consider to be almost a mandatory skill on a destroyer because it allows you to move even if your engine has been broken. Well, if you don't have quick fix, which essentially does the same thing, allows for mobility when the engine or the rudder has been broken, then I don't think you can give up unstoppable. But since Fulgosi has quick fix, we can take unstoppable, and then we get 3 charges of the smoke, 3 of the engine boost, and I believe 4 of the DFAA. But the main reason for Fulgosi is in his second row, his unique skill called Squid's Ink, which buffs smokescreen deployment time by 60%. Now, in order to take that, you have to forego the rather excellent Go All Out skill, which of course improves the concealment by 10% while the engine boost is active, but also nerfs the cooldown time of the engine boost to make it nearly 4 minutes before you get it back. And our detect with this build, we've got Sims and Bergamini as inspirations to achieve a sort of tank build. Well, if we took Go All Out, our smoke screen would only last for 35 seconds, but with Squid's Ink, it lasts for 53.4. And then with the Go All Out, whenever we deploy that, we get our concealment reduced from 6.3 to 5.8. Personally, I think all that really means, if you're trying to play this destroyer as intended, is that you get spotted closer to a battleship, and then you use your smoke screen closer than you otherwise would if your detect was worse. And I would rather have a nearly minute-long smoke screen for a ton of various reasons. So that's why I've opted for Fulgosi. Now, I suppose you could choose Rizo to build into the main battery guns, but I just don't see the value in that because the reload time is so terribly long. By the way, we have had to take this capture circle again because it was flipped by that Akizuki who's now running away, and we're going to be meeting him soon so that we can see how this thing does against a legitimate gunboat. What a potato move, though, to sail out of the cap. We're going to have to reverse back into it now and restart our progress. Akizuki spotting us there through the gap in the island. We take a blind shot. We don't hit him. Fair enough. We're going to reverse back into the cap and talk about the changes that Paolo received. So, an optional upgrade was added into a 5th module slot that swaps AP shells, which the AP on Paolo Emilio, I think it was terrible. I never got it to do anything of value. I couldn't even get it to Citadel cruisers at like point blank range. Just didn't seem to have any pen, and I'm glad to be rid of it. The SAP is far more preferable. The HE was always decent, but with the kind of reload Paolo has, I think the SAP is going to be better for dealing with enemy destroyers. You'll see what I mean soon enough. Anyway, the reload time base on the SAP guns is 12 seconds. I've got the reload mod installed, and so the reload time is 10.8. That's still extremely slow. These sap shells deal a maximum of 3,000 damage base, and they can pen up to 38 millimeters of armor. So they're pretty good at dealing damage, they just deal it slowly, and I think if you run into a legitimate gunboat destroyer that has a fast reload and good DPM, they can probably still take out the Paolo Emilio if they play it right. Now, on the other hand, we're about to meet this Akizuki here after taking this cap a second time, and he's going to make a terrible error that makes it difficult for himself. You see, he's shooting HE at us, and whenever that HE hits the center of our ship, well, there we have a 60 millimeter armor plate, sort of like the Khabarovsk, and that 60 millimeters is enough to shatter the HE shells of any destroyer you're going to encounter, Akizuki included. If he had shot AP at us, well, that AP would pen that 60 millimeter plate, and we'd be in big trouble. But even so, he's going to get pens on us sometimes with the HE, and fires too. We've had to use our DCP, so it's on cooldown. We're on a perma-fire for 24 seconds. That's dealing a number to us. You can see here that even in this kind of scenario, where he is shattering a lot of his HE shells off of our belt, he's doing a lot of damage to us. Now, he was helped a little bit because I think we took a torpedo from the CV, but our HP has evaporated, and it's not like we have a small amount. With the Sims Inspiration, we have 27,200. I think without Sims, without Bergamini, who of course has that gimmick of making you take less damage as you take more, I don't know how well this engagement would have gone. We might have been reduced to next to no HP. We have 4,000 right now, so it's not like that's a lot. Or we could have been sunk by the Akizuki. It's unclear, but I think this is a decent example of, even though the Paolo does have hard-hitting, sap-slinging guns now, I don't think it's an especially good gunboat at taking out enemy destroyers. Now, you could tell me I'm not built for doing that, and fair enough. My reload time with Fulgosi at the helm is 10.8 seconds on these guns. I did check to see what happens if I use Rizo, because he's got the observant range skill that buffs the reload time. Well, it doesn't seem to get much better than 10 seconds. I clocked it at 10.3 with him at the helm, and so I figure it's just better to build into the smoke screens with Fulgosi. In fact, that smoke screen there is probably what helps us not be sunk by Akizuki. Now, obviously, we did a number of damage to him, and we're able to take him out, which is the most important thing we could have done in this battle. I wanted to make sure I did it, because as you can see, the kill count across both of the teams is totally even. It's a 4v4, but the difference is the blue team still has one living destroyer. Much to the dismay of this CV, which has been harassing me this entire battle. And as you can see, even though I've used DFAA 3 out of 4 times, we have yet to shoot down a single plane. Along with the SAP mod that the Paolo got, The main battery guns are no longer dual purpose, so they are not AA at all. That means the Paolo Emilio is saddled with perhaps some of the worst AA for any destroyer at this tier. It's got a number of 20 millimeter AA guns and like four 13 millimeter ones. The 20 millimeter ones do an average damage per second of only 100. The smaller 13 millimeter ones do an average damage per second of 37. In other words, absolutely nothing. And the 20 millimeter AA guns have a range of only 2 kilometers, while the 13 millimeter ones have a range of 1.2. That's no range at all, and no damage at all, which is why we're not shooting down any planes. Paolo Emilio is totally incapable now of even pretending to defend itself against planes. So there is that. I don't know really how it was when the main battery was dual purpose, if it was any better. I imagine it probably wasn't, but at least the AA was longer range, so they didn't have to literally be right on top of you to have a chance of sending a plane down into the sea. And of course, the Paolo didn't have DFAA, I don't think, prior to this rework. There was just nothing in that fourth consumable slot. Now it does, but even with the DFAA active, the AA is useless. So that's at least something to keep in mind. But, of course, the main gimmick of this ship is the torpedoes. These torpedoes are very good. They have a maximum simulated damage of 23,415, making them hit harder than I think pretty much any torpedo in the game, aside from maybe the Rodney's bow-launched squiggly torps, which do nearly 30k, but you only have one of each. Here you have 4, and one rack of 4 torps is just about enough to send any battleship back to port. But what we're doing now is we've captured the Bravo, we've captured the Charlie. We don't need to be aggressive here and risk our ship. We can torp by having battleships push into us, staying outside of the detectability range, and having them sail into our torpedoes without having to engage in a YOLO run and use a smoke. This one battleship behind me, for inexplicable reasons, has been constantly pinging me to get back. I don't know why. I feel like they're benefiting from the fact that I'm around to spot these battleships. They take out the one over there, the Richelieu, that we got a torp on, and that just leaves North Carolina. At this point, I feel like I've done next to no damage in this battle, so I'd like to hit North Carolina with some torps. I deliberately go behind the island to cut off line of sight, so maybe he doesn't change his course and ends up eating a torpedo. I don't know if my teammates are necessarily happy about that, but hey, at this point, 33,000 damage. I wanted more, and one torpedo is enough to get us nearly 20,000 damage. 52. North Carolina is pretty much toast now. We'll come around this island, get him spotted again, and I think we'll end up using the main battery guns to take him out. But all in all, after this buff, I suppose Paolo Emilio is better at dealing damage to enemy destroyers with its main battery guns, as evidenced by the Akizuki, but that guy didn't exactly play the engagement optimally, at least not in my opinion. Had he shot AP, I don't know how that would have gone. Maybe a little bit better for him. Had I not built this thing to be a tank with Sims and Bergamini, I also don't know how it would have gone. We end this battle with 1,936 HP, and we have 2 capture ribbons, 1 fist, 1 kill. We're going to end up at the top of the leaderboard because, again, the most useful thing you can do with a destroyer is take the objectives and counter the enemy destroyers. Even after this buff, I don't think Paolo is very well suited to that. It's still very good at being a YOLO torp machine and sending battleships back to port, but I don't think that wins you games as much as taking objectives and countering the enemy destroyers. That's the main goal of a destroyer, and even with its sap-slinging guns, I don't think Paolo Emilio is very good at it. So I'm still not a huge fan of this destroyer, but I'll certainly take the sap over the rather useless AP. The rework did at least help with that. So let me know what you think on the ship. I assume I'm in the minority for not liking it as much as I do. But give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.